We're doing it. We're doing this again, huh? How about those apples? What's up, Luce? How you doing? I don't know if you can hear her purring, but she is. She's purring. She's a happy cat. YouTube is waking up. That's good. Wake on up, YouTube. Do you? Yeah. All right. Good to see everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good day. Good future. Some of you are in the future. You're in Australia. You're in the future. Good morrow. I hope everyone is doing amazing. We're going to be talking about some election security or insecurities, if you will. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's going on in Iowa and in California. But first, a little update on a well-known corporatist, Pharma Bro Martin Shkreli. So check this out. Federal Trade Commission, New York Attorney General seek lifetime ban for Pharma Bro Martin Shkreli for illegally monopolizing a drug. So the Federal Trade Commission and New York's Attorney General sued incarcerated Pharma Bro Martin Shkreli and his company, Viera Pharmaceuticals, for allegedly illegally monopolizing the anti-parasite medication Diapram. The lawsuit comes almost 5 years after Shkreli gained widespread infamy by purchasing the rights to sell Diapram and increasing its price by more than 5,000%. We all remember when that happened. Shkreli is currently serving a 7-year prison sentence for financial crimes. So I don't know. How about they? I have an idea. They should just buy Martin Shkreli's prison sentence and then make it 5,000 times the amount. That's what they should do. They'd be like, you know what? Instead of suing you, we did this thing where we bought your prison sentence and then we amplified it by 5,000 times. So what Martin Shkreli did is nothing short of evil. And it's, of course, good that he got caught for this. But the problem is, Martin Shkreli, they're saying they want to ban his company, which, of course, they should, abso-freaking-lutely. The problem is, here's the case with Martin Shkreli. Martin Shkreli is the guy who pushed the envelope too far. In other words, Big Pharma does this stuff all the time, and it's legal. And very little is done to stop it. Martin Shkreli just really took it to an extreme, and he had to take the fall because of it, which, of course, that's good. Of course, he deserves to be in jail. As far as I'm concerned, that guy deserves to be in jail for the rest of his life. But let's not for 1 second get confused and think that, well, now that they caught Martin Shkreli, we're fine. The pharmaceutical industry's fine. No, they do stuff like what Martin Shkreli did on a daily basis. And not only is it legal in many cases, it's celebrated through a process called evergreen, which is a process that people specialize in. They'll change little things about a drug, like the color of a pill or something, and then they're able to renew the patent to stop generics from entering the market so they can price gouge and monopolize the price on a drug. And it might be a drug that someone needs to live. So this is what Big Pharma does. And when bills are introduced, Bernie Sanders had a bill that would have helped us get cheaper drugs from Canada. Cory Booker stabbed in the back because of the Big Pharma money he was taking at the time. There's another bill out there where the government would start making generic drugs, and Bernie Sanders is working on that along with Elizabeth Warren, actually. And that's facing a lot of resistance from Big Pharma and their donor class. And, I do firmly believe that there is a line between good and evil. Is there a ton of gray area in our world? Of course there is. Do all of us make mistakes at times? Of course we do. And none of us are perfect. But you reach a point in the sand where there is good and evil. I truly believe that. I truly believe, even a lot of psychological research that's out there, that they will acknowledge that at times you have someone who is just an evil, psychopathic criminal. Eventually, there is that line where it's like, no, this person's not suffering. They're just evil. They're just a criminal. And when you look at Big Pharma and what it's doing, it crosses that line. I mean, Martin Shkreli is evil. I don't think that's an embellishment. I don't think that's unfair. I think that's an accurate assertion. The guy is evil. And he participates in an industry where that type of behavior is smiled upon. So, I mean, they shouldn't be saying, let's ban Martin Shkreli's company. We're fighting for that. Of course, that should be a no-brainer. That guy should not be allowed anywhere near. I mean, I think he shouldn't be let out of jail for the rest of his life, but he should not be anywhere close to being able to operate in this corrupt industry, since he has taken it to an astronomical level of corruption. But the conversation shouldn't just be, well, let's stop his company. The conversation should be, let's stop the types of laws that allow this to happen. Let's come up with new policy where something like this can't happen, because it can't happen in a lot of other countries. In a lot of other countries, this sort of thing cannot happen. What Big Pharma gets away with in the United States does not happen in other countries. So, Martin Shkreli update for you. All right. So we're going to go to some election integrity. Let's start. So we're going to go to two places. We're going to go to Iowa and California. I guess we'll do Iowa first, since their caucus is coming up very soon. So let's see what they're doing in Iowa. This is actually from NPR, Nice Polite Republicans. And this is back a little ways, but this was shared in our Reddit subsection by Project Rage. And Project Rage, thank you for sharing this with me, because I think there's a lot going on in this 4-minute soundbite, and we're going to listen to it. So check this out. Let me make sure the volume's good. Check this out.
The upcoming Iowa caucuses represent the first in a year of big tests for America's democracy after Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. In fact, NPR and Iowa Public Radio have learned that Iowa state Democrats are going to...
So I want to listen to the whole thing, but I just want to mention real quick, in case you missed it, which I'm sure you didn't notice, they immediately genuflected to the altar of Russiagate. That's important to all this. All right.
Use a new smartphone app to help run their caucuses. We're going to talk more about that now with two reporters. First, Miles Parks. He covers election security for NPR. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And Iowa Public Radio's Kate Payne. She's in Des Moines. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks.
I want to start with you. First, just remind us how caucuses work and how an app would be involved this time around.
Yeah, so caucuses are very different from a primary. There are no ballots. There are no voting booths. Iowans will physically go to different community centers all across the state and physically show their support for a candidate by standing in a different part of the room. And so as far as this app, the party is hoping that it will help precinct leaders be able to report their results more quickly. Those leaders will be calculating how many delegates each candidate wins based on the support in the room. And so having an app, the intention is that process will happen faster and local leaders will have help in calculating those numbers.
Miles, we've talked a lot about cybersecurity since the 2016 election.
This part's really important.
Given that cyber attacks were part of Russia's interference. How big a deal is this, that Iowa Democrats are going to try and use this approach in 2020?
It's one thing to introduce a new piece of election technology without really any practice beforehand, and then it's another thing to introduce that piece of election technology without giving any security details about it. We know very little about the specifics of this app. We don't know who developed it or who wrote the code. We don't know what sorts of security tests have been performed on it. These are the two basic questions that any security expert would ask when confronting a new system. And the Democratic Party says basically they're not going to provide any of this information because they're scared it would help hackers. But experts actually say that secrecy doesn't help against hacking at all. Here's Betsy Cooper. She's a cybersecurity policy expert at the Aspen Institute.
Basic transparency around how it was built, how up-to-date the security of the app is, and how it's been tested all could be made publicly available with little cost to the DNC.
Kate, how are these concerns being addressed? As you said, this app is focused mainly on reporting caucus results. Could the election results be, for instance, changed remotely?
So because of the way the caucuses work, there are thousands of witnesses who are seeing the results play out in these caucus locations. This year, the party is also using preference cards, so there will be a paper trail involved that could be referenced. So the idea of the results being tampered with, that could be overturned. There will also be contingency plans that the party has set up. Troy Price, the head of the state party in Iowa, says there'll be a hotline for folks to call in if the app doesn't work for whatever reason.
If there is a challenge, we'll be ready with a backup and a backup to that backup and a backup to the backup to the backup. I mean, we are fully prepared to make sure that we can get these results in and get these results in accurately.
Finally, Miles, given what happened back in 2016, what are some of the other sorts of problems that people should be aware of?
There are a couple scenarios to look out for here. A successful attack could potentially lead to the wrong winner being announced and then having to be retracted, which would obviously lead to a lot of questions about the election's legitimacy. An attack that didn't even break into the system could still potentially bring it down, which would obviously lead to delays in reporting and a lot of confusion at all these individual precincts. And then there's the possibility, you have to remember that this app is going to be downloaded on the phones of almost 2,000 party and caucus leaders across the state. These are personal devices that have emails, passwords, text messages, photos, and Russia has already shown an ability to weaponize information that they have hacked and stolen. They did this leading up to the 2016 election, hacking John Podesta's email account and weaponizing those emails.
John Podesta fell for a phishing scheme because he's a moron, but we'll continue listening.
Emails. We just do not have enough security specifics about this app to know how it will protect against that same sorts of hacking this time around.
That's NPR's Miles Parks. Thanks.
So a lot was going on here. First of all, if you were counting, they genuflected at the altar of Russia hysteria 5 times in that 4-minute segment. So basically once every 60 seconds or so, they genuflected at the altar of Russiagate. And when you are so concerned about a foreign attack, it's a lot easier to overlook the concerns domestically. And look at what they admitted in this 4-minute piece. We don't know who developed this app. We don't know who's behind the app. We don't know how secure it is or isn't. We don't know any of the mechanisms behind it. And the Democratic Party is sharing none of this. Why? Because they're saying if they do, it might get hacked. And if somebody tampers with the results from this phone app, as they acknowledged in this piece, well, what could that mean? That could mean the right winner's not announced. That could mean that can mean that the votes are tallied properly, votes are counted properly. You get the idea. You all know what could happen if something is tampered with or hacked. Meanwhile, the Democratic establishment is not being transparent at all about this app in Iowa. And what do we already know the Democratic establishment is doing? Well, if you took a look at the DNC Rules Committee or the DNC policy committees, they are stacked with big pharma executives. They are stacked with corrupt union officials. They are stacked with people from the Clinton administration, the Obama administration. They are basically anybody who would potentially be against Bernie Sanders and who would potentially be in bed with big pharma, in bed with oil and gas, in bed. I mean, that's who all of those members are, and they were all appointed by Tom Perez. And the DNC does not have the best track record when it comes to allowing an election to go through ethically. So in this report, they're all talking about the fear of Russian interference. And remember what happened in 2016. Well, I do remember what happened in 2016. John Podesta fell for a phishing scam. There was some information that WikiLeaks published about the DNC cheating. And a Russian spam agency published some memes for a mere $1,400, I believe. At least that was what was spent with Google. They published some memes that were in broken English. Some of them were seen by about 300 people. They didn't really have any common theme politically. They were all over the place. Some were pro-Trump, some were anti-Trump, some was about Jesus helping you to stop masturbating. That's what happened. That's what happened. Again, the Russia hysteria is the establishment left's version of voter fraud, meaning it's a very, very minor issue at most that is overamplified to distract you from other things. And here you see, and in an NPR piece, 5 times they genuflect at the altar of Russia hysteria. Why is that relevant? Well, because look at all the other stuff they just admitted to. That's very noteworthy. The Democratic establishment is telling you nothing about this app that they're going to use in Iowa. They're sharing no information with you. There's no evidence of any accountability that is privy to the public. None whatsoever. And they don't have to. Why? Because it might get hacked by Russia if we tell you anything, even though even this piece itself had a security expert say that has nothing to, you should tell us what's going on here. Like, whether you tell us or not, that doesn't mean that we're any more or less likely to be hacked. Oh, and by the way, you want to talk about hacking in our voting machines or in our voting process or our caucus process? Let's take a look at the fact that our voting machines themselves were able to be hacked by 10-year-olds. So it's very interesting that when you spend all the time worrying about a foreign interferer, you kind of overlook the domestic ones. You overlook the fact that the DNC has purged voter rolls, that voters were purged from the rolls in Detroit and in New York City and in California. You overlook the fact that the DNC was actively trying to cheat Bernie Sanders in 2016. And it's safe to say, given all the committee members they have now, they've kind of abandoned that idea of being neutral. In fact, they're admitting regret that they weren't more neutral because they see Bernie Sanders winning. You overlook the fact that we still have superdelegates. We didn't get rid of them. They can just come on a later ballot. They can come on the second ballot and thwart the will of the people. If there's no clear majority, the superdelegates come in and they can just abandon the will of the people and give the nomination to whoever they want. You overlook all those things when all that is amplified is the supposed Russian boogeyman. And that's what we're dealing with here. That's what we're dealing with here. They just openly admit it in this 4-minute NPR piece. They openly admit it. Hey, there's an app that's going to count the votes, that's going to tally the votes in an incredibly consequential election. I mean, this is not just another election. This is a big one. This is a big one because there is a chance to really alter the conversation we're having in this country, to really alter the priorities of this country. If Bernie Sanders is elected, is he going to get through every single thing he wants to get through? It's doubtful, but it's going to completely alter the conversation we're having in this country and the priorities in this country. We have a chance to go from war empire that will inevitably fail, as all of them do, to a country that actually looks out for its people, to a country that's a diplomatic player in the game of the world. We have a chance to do that, and yes, it can be done. Humanity has proven over its history that it is adaptable, that it does adapt, and sometimes change happens quick. Sometimes it's a sharp shift, and we've seen that in the history of our country in the contemporary sense. Look at FDR, and then on the bad side of the coin, look at Reagan. Look at how quick Reagan did what he did, and yeah, the rise of neoliberalism started with Carter, but Reagan just put it on steroids, baby, and that was a pretty quick change. Look at how our country changed after the invasion of Iraq, after 9/11. So yes, we can have a sharp turn, and we can have a sharp turn for the better. And here we are, as Iowa is approaching. There's going to be a phone app that the Democrats are in charge of, and you know nothing about the accountability of this app, and they don't have to tell you. Why? Because if they do, that might help Russia do something. I mean, it's almost comical how tone deaf. I mean, look at all they admitted to in that report. But as long as the Russia boogeyman is at bay, it's not newsworthy that the Democrats are sharing nothing in regards to the transparency of this app. The Democratic establishment, which has been actively cheating, and continues to cheat since day one. If you don't genuflect at the altar of the DCCC at the DNC, they will screw you and they will keep you out. And there's audio footage of them actively trying to screw over progressive grassroots candidates. It continually happens. It happens every day. We've covered countless examples on this show. But let's let them have an app and share nothing with us. What could possibly go wrong there? So that's what's going on in Iowa. Now, fortunately, in California, it's a lot more transparent. He said as he got on the sarcasm slide, and got ready to take the ride down. So take a look at this. This isn't. Now, we all know that ballot placement is pretty significant. That's a thing. You can take a look at the case of Jim Keedy. If you don't think ballot placement is very important, Jim Keedy was a progressive who ran in New Jersey. I believe it was the 4th district, and they didn't want to see him do good, so they totally screwed him over on the placement on where he was on the ballot, and he lost. But check this out. So here's a sample California ballot. Let's take a look at this photo. Look at that. Now, I know this isn't going to be a make 'em or break 'em thing because, I mean, people are going to seek out Bernie Sanders' name. But look at how just in your face that is. First of all, Tom Steyer, Deval Patrick. Look at this. Bernie Sanders, they put right near Joe Sestak, near the bottom. Bernie Sanders is underneath John Delaney. John Delaney, you know the only piece of press John Delaney has gotten as of recent? A C-SPAN bus rode by. Not C-SPAN itself. He could have gotten a hot 13 people if it was C-SPAN itself. But it was the C-SPAN bus, which has barely any followers on Twitter. And I don't know why that exists. I don't know how C-SPAN can even afford a bus. But they have a C-SPAN bus that goes around, and they stop John Delaney. John Delaney. And John Delaney is listed above Bernie Sanders on a sample California mail-in ballot. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? It's like they're not even trying to conceal the contempt the establishment has for Bernie Sanders and how desperately they don't want him to win. And one of the things we covered on this show in the past, we covered the voting machines in California and how in Los Angeles they're going to try this brand new technology that hasn't been tested yet, that's been incredibly susceptible, and basically everything that could go wrong, it's gone wrong. And they have no idea how these machines are going to work out. None whatsoever, and they don't care. We covered that on this show. You can find that clip. But here's a little update on that. So check this out. State okays LA County's new voting machines with a whole lot of caveats. So again, these incredibly susceptible voting machines, they okayed those. They don't care. They're saying they're fine. But here's an update on what might also be going on. The state of California has given Los Angeles County's new voting equipment its seal of approval with some significant caveats. On Friday, Secretary of State Alex Padilla granted conditional certification. So here's the thing. The county must meet a stack of requirements before primary election voters get their hands on the machines starting February 22nd. Election officials have a duty to make the voting booth voting both as secure and as accessible as possible. As part of my certification of VSAP, this is according to Alex Padilla, I am insisting on some essential modifications to the system and requiring ongoing reports from Los Angeles County so that we can continue to improve the voting experience for Angelenos. Now, here's the thing. The headline. In a reversal of the county's plans, voters must be given the option to hand mark paper ballots at new voting centers. All right. Now, here's the thing. It's not clear what the blank write-in paper ballots are going to be like. Padilla required in his certificate. We don't know what this looks like. It's up to the county. They must contain all elements consistent with federal voting assistance programs, federal write-in absentee ballot. Voters may have to handwrite candidates' names. Padilla's office said in the straight, but these ballots provide an opportunity for voters to hand mark their ballot if that is their preference. You may need to write in their name. You may need to just make a mark. You may need to take a little stone and chisel out the candidate's name. You may need to, so it's not, the point being, it's not clear what these paper ballots are going to look like, how they're going to work, how they're going to be tallied. but we have to have the option available to you. Why is that option available to you? Well, the option's available to you because we have no idea how this machine's going to work. We have no clue. We have no clue. You might be handed a provisional ballot, which means your vote ain't getting counted, by the way. Your vote ain't getting counted if you're handed a provisional ballot. But yeah, there might be this paper requirement. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know. You might need to write in the candidate's name. You might need to just need to go outside and light the ballot on fire and then do a cartwheel, and then we'll count it. We don't know. Yeah, we have no idea. Who has any confidence in this? Who has any confidence in this process? We're trying this new machine. We don't know. Would you imagine you were buying a product? Imagine you were, let's say, car. Let's just say car. And you go to the car dealership and they're like, yes, this is a totally new car. We don't know if it's going to spontaneously explode when you start it. We don't know if the airbags will work. We don't even know if the radio is a guarantee, but it is new. It is cutting edge. That car kind of seems a little scary. Can I have a substitute? Nope. This is the car we sell. This is the only car you sell. Yeah, this is the car we sell. You know what? We have a backup. You can use this bicycle, and the tire may or may not fall off. It may or may not. The brakes may or may not work. In fact, it might not even be a bicycle. It might just be a booster seat. We're not sure, but you can try that. How much confidence would you have in this car dealership besides none? That's the election integrity that California is giving you. That analogy I just made with buying a car, that is literally no embellishment, the election security we have in Los Angeles and California as a whole. Unbelievable. We don't know. Yeah, we have no idea. It needs to meet these requirements by February 22nd. Will it? We have no idea. We have no clue. And then if it doesn't, what are we going to do? There might be a paper option. Yeah, maybe, sort of. Democracy, baby. This is, our elections are very fair and free. We're crushing it. I mean, Iowa, California, you just go down the list. You go down the list. Beautiful. So there's a little bit of an election integrity coverage for you. But I'm sure Russia putting out memes is the big thing. That's the only thing we need to worry about. Russia putting out memes, and then a spam agency putting out memes, and every now and again throughout the history of this country, sometimes somebody voted and they weren't actually the person they said they were. That's happened, like a small handful of times, maybe. Those are the big things. We can just knock out those two things. We're fine. The security of our process, we're totally fine. The transparency that the establishment gives us, totally fine. Super delegates, no big deal. The Electoral College, no big deal. Gerrymandering, not a problem. Voter suppression, whatever. But, that's all fine. It's just, Russia putting out memes and, voter fraud over on the right. Those are the big things. Those are the big things. Let's keep our priorities straight, America. We got this. All right, here's a little bit of sort of good news, kind of. This is from RF Hartwell over on the Reddit subsection, which, again, friendly reminder, our Reddit subsection is just reddit.com/r/GetYourNewsOnWithRon. And we got that Iowa Democratic Nice Polite Republican story from Project Rage over on the Reddit. And we also got this one from RF Hartwell over on the Reddit. I hadn't been using the Reddit as much because sometimes I log into the stream and people tweet me a ton of stuff. And then before I know it, I have as much stuff as I can talk about for one segment, So anyway, I gave the Reddit some special love today. And pretty much everything I picked was from Reddit. So not neglecting you, Reddit. You're the redheaded stepchild I just remembered that I had. And I'm allowed to say that, by the way, because I can say that. I'm allowed. Anyway. So this is from RF Hartwell over on the Reddit. Now, if I told you, what do you think more Americans do? Go to the movies or go to the library? Now, if you're like me, you're kind of likely to say, well, of course they go to the movies. However, according to this statistic, in 2019, that apparently wasn't the case. Check this out. In 2019, more Americans went to the library than to the movies. Yes, really. The U.S. film industry may have generated revenue somewhere in the region of $40 billion last year, but it seems Hollywood still has plenty of work to do if it wants to compete with the most hallowed of American institutions, the public library. Yes, according to a recent Gallup poll, visiting the local library remains by far the most common cultural activity Americans engage in. As reported earlier today by Justin McCarthy, and this is a couple days old, by the way, so it's not like today as of the recording of this, but visiting the library remains the most common cultural activity Americans engage in by far. The average 10.5 trips to the library U.S. adults report taking in 2019 exceeds their participation in 8 other common leisure activities. Americans attend live music or theatrical events and visit national or historical parks roughly 4 times a year on average, and visit museums and gambling casinos 2.5 times annually. Trips to amusement or theme parks 1.5 and zoos 0.9 are the least common activities on the list. Interesting. Very interesting. So, the optimists look at this. It's like, Americans really still care about their libraries. That's good, which of course it is. But let's kind of look at the more real view of this that I think is a factor. A lot of Americans can't afford to do more of these leisurely activities. A lot of people can't afford. A lot of people would probably go to the movies a lot more if they could afford it. Looking at the movies specifically, and I am what is known as an elder millennial. That's what I was dubbed on the Jimmy Dore show. So I'm at about the tail end of the millennial generation. I think there's a couple millennials that are older than me, but for the most part, I'm borderline Gen X. I'm at the kind of like the beginning slate of the millennial generation. When I was growing up, going to the movies was a much more affordable thing to do. Obviously, it costs less numerically as the dollar has, of course, changed. But even factoring that change of $1, and this is coming from someone who my interests have not changed all that much from my adolescent life until now. I have always really loved music. I still do. I like to attend live music. I also like going to the theater occasionally. I liked all those things even when I was younger. I did the musicals in high school. So my interests have not changed much. But when I was an adolescent, it was always a more affordable activity to go to the movie versus going to a show. And when I say show, I mean like a music show, like a rock show, a punk show, whatever. Typically, not all the time, but typically it was more affordable to go to the movies than go to something like that. If it was like a national act or something, if it was like a local show, well, that's different. If it was like a bunch of local bands, it was probably cheaper, or in some cases the same price. When I was an adolescent, a movie was about $8. That was the average price to go to a movie. It was $8 to go into the movie. A show would be around, sometimes it was as low as $5. It was also not uncommon for it to be more like $8. If it was a national act, it was more expensive. It was like 15 or so typically. So going like if a band I really like came to town, chances are that was a more expensive activity than going to the movies. I don't think that's the case anymore. Now, going to the movies is actually just as much as doing one of those other activities typically. Not all the time, but typically going to the movies is in the same price range as those things. That's why me personally, I don't care for going to the movies that much, because I'd rather spend that money going to see a live performance of sorts. I'd much rather see a band. I'd much rather go to the theater. I'd much rather, if it's something good. If it's something lame, then no. And I'm not a big musicals guy. I like some, but I'm not a big musical. I prefer like a play. Like I'm more of a play guy. I'm more of a play guy. Anyway, so I feel like even factoring in the currency of $1, like going to the movies is a more expensive activity, comparatively speaking, than it used to be. Like, so you get what I'm saying. So I don't particularly like doing it that much. That is cool that a lot of Americans report going to the library at least 10 times a year. That ain't bad. I definitely do that. I don't know how many times, but I go to my library I mean, I always have something from my library. So I'm going there at least, once or twice a month at least. So I guarantee I probably get, if I had to take a guess, I probably go to the library about 20 times a year. I definitely don't go to 20 movies a year. Nowhere close. Now, as far as like live performance, I'm sort of a weird statistic there because, I kind of do that for a job. So it's like, do my own shows count? And part of the reason I might not go to as much or might go to more is because, well, anyway, you get the idea. When you're touring nightclubs as part of what you do, does that count? Does that not count? I don't know. Obviously, if that counts, I'd probably do that more than anything else because, that's my job. But anyway, this is an interesting statistic. I think in some ways there's reason to be positive, but in other ways it's also saying that, look, the library is free. These other things are not. And when we live in a country where about half the country can't even afford $1,000 emergency, and half the country is working 2 and 3 jobs just to survive, and people are dealing with crushing amounts of debt, yeah, it would make sense that they're not spending money on leisurely activities as much if something is free at the library. So, but I love libraries. I love my library. I'll always love libraries. And we cannot lose these important cultural institutions. So I'm happy that statistics like this are out there. So whenever they're considering slashing money from the libraries, which they do all the time, people can at least point to this and be like, hey, more Americans are using the library than going to the movies. We got to fund these things. So I'm glad the statistics out there. I really am. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing that, RF Hartwell. Fun conversation. So let me see what you guys are saying real quick here. And then I have one last thing, and a contributor wants to weigh in on this. Or actually, we'll, yeah. So let me see what you guys are saying. By the way, tour dates, I got them. February 8th, Tucson, Arizona. Don't wait. Get your tickets now, romplico.com. February 29th, San Francisco, California. March 12th, Orlando, Florida. March 13th, Tampa, Florida. March 14th, Miami, Florida. April 9th, I'll be at Concord University. April 10th, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. April 24th, Seattle, Washington. April 25th, Portland, Oregon. That's the first third of the year. But dates are announced through October, and we're coming to a bunch of cities. We're coming to Indianapolis, Detroit, Cleveland. We're coming to Chicago. We're coming to Milwaukee. We're coming to Louisville. We're coming to Nashville. We're coming to New York City. We're coming back, baby. Boston. We're coming to Portland, Maine for the first time. We're coming to Burlington, Vermont for the first time. We're coming to Madison. We're coming to Minneapolis. Don't wait. Get your tickets, romplicone.com. NM Steve C., thank you very much for your Super Chat contribution. Change your NPR joke to nice, polite Russia Gators. Sean Graham, what happens if Bernie is cheated again? Well, that's tough. What happens if Bernie is cheated again? I mean, I don't think it's an if. I think they're certainly going to try. I think it's what happens if they're successful in cheating Bernie again. And I think if Bernie's cheated, we're for sure going to get 4 more years of Trump. We're for sure going to continue this descent into rugged neoliberalism. And I don't know when we'll get another opportunity to get out of it. And that's just my honest answer. When a candidate like Bernie, and look, Bernie's not perfect. There's certain things about Bernie I dislike and I disagree with. But at the end of the day, when a candidate like Bernie makes it this far, it's because the establishment screwed up. The establishment tries to stop something like this from getting this far, but they couldn't. They messed up. They were able to cheat him, but they weren't able to extinguish the movement. And, it's not often you get an accident like that. And we may get another shot in 2024, or even, at a smaller level in midterms that, there might be some more progressive takeovers, but it's not guaranteed. And it might be 30 years before we get another opportunity to really alter the conversation with a Bernie Sanders-like presidency. So yeah, if he gets, you know, they're going to try to cheat him. If they're successful, it ain't going to be good. And, you know, we got to try. We got to try. Kate, what's up? Thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. Are you going to do on-site reporting and commentary at the convention? Yes. Would you consider asking Thomas Frank to come in and discuss the next steps in the election process and electoral college? Sure. I mean, I don't really know Thomas Frank from anyone else. I mean, I've emailed with him before. But I don't know if he would listen to me. I mean, I don't know why he would, but yeah, I don't. Is Thomas Frank going to be at the convention? I hope so. I've never met him in person. I've met him like via Skype, and I've emailed with him before, but I never met him in person. It'd be cool to meet him in person. But yeah, if he's there, it'd be cool if he talked about that stuff. Absolutely. NM Steve, thank you very much. Sean, thank you very much. Kate, thank you very much. Long Beach and Iowa Dems, or excuse me, Project Rage, RF Hartwell, and Long Beach. Thank you very much for today's stories. I appreciate that very much. And if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of content, including my album. You get to download my album. Just boom, it's there. You download it. And you get dialogues between myself and my cat, Lucy. You get a patrons-only stream once a week. Once a week, patrons-only stream, all for you, where I only respond to the patrons, and the replay's only available on Patreon. You get all that for a give what you can level, and you help me expand this show. I'm trying to do mini docs around city-owned internet. I'm trying to do an interview series with musicians. I do need more resources to make that happen. So even $1 a month goes a long way. Patreon.com/Ron Placone if you are so able and interested. All right. So guys, getting back to this. So there's been some activism going on in Illinois. Now here's a reminder, and Long Beach gives us this reminder on who Joe Biden really surrounds himself with, on what Joe Biden is really all about. Joe Biden's super PAC, this is from last year, but still relevant. Joe Biden's super PAC is being organized by corporate lobbyists for healthcare industry, weapons makers, and finance. So, though Biden has pledged not to take contribution from registered lobbyists, the prohibition appears not to apply to big dollar organizers of his super PAC. Among the individuals involved with the effort are several lobbyists for leading corporations and foreign government. Longtime Biden supporter Larry Raske is lobbying on behalf of Raytheon, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and the Republic of Azerbaijan and other clients. Steve Shale, a former Obama campaign strategist, is a registered state lobbyist with Cardenas Partners, a Florida lobbying firm founded by former Jeb Bush advisor El Cardenas. Shale's current client list includes the Florida Hospital Association, JetBlue Airways, State Farm Insurance, Walt Disney Parks, AT&T, and the Associated Industry of Florida. And keep in mind, he opened his campaign. Joe Biden opened his campaign with a dinner with a bunch of Comcast executives. And he's in the bed of Big Pharma. He's in the pocket of Big Pharma. That's who Joe Biden is. That's who Joe Biden has always been. You can find footage of Joe Biden, even when he was younger, saying he wanted to prostitute himself for money. So literally his words. Those are the words he used. I was ready to prostitute myself for the big donor money. And they told him he was too young then. Well, guess what? He ain't too young now. So that's who Joe Biden is. And we know this. But there's a reminder from a deep dive The Intercept did. But here's something. Some people in Iowa are spreading that message, and they're spreading that message by going directly into Joe Biden's office. Here's the Iowa City for Community Improvement Action. Check this out. Let me show this to you guys. Boom. And check this out here. So they showed up to Joe Biden's office, and this was right here in Iowa, and they demanded Joe Biden stop lying about Medicare for all. Here's let me see. Let me find some footage. There's this really cool thing where they did, here, check this out. They did a march. So they marched through Joe Biden's office. Check this out. In Joe Biden. Oh, that's good. That's great. It's not funny. Biden's office, I'm gonna let it shine. In going.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm
Gonna let it. Awesome. Shout out to Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement Action. They are protesting Joe Biden for being complicit with Big Pharma, for being complicit with the insurance industry, and for lying about Medicare for All, which Joe Biden has done in every single debate. He lies about the cost of Medicare for All, and he does it because he wants to stop people from getting health insurance, because that's what Joe Biden's all about. If it's going to hurt his donors, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. If it hurts his donors, he's happy. Or excuse me, if it hurts his donors, he won't let that happen. If it doesn't help you, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about his donors. And seriously, right now, really, dude, I don't know if I agree with that. I really don't. Come on, don't do no that. Hello, it is me, Chaos Agent 11. It is really nice what community group doing for Joe Biden. But you must ask yourself, are they really there because Joe Biden's corrupt with Big Pharma money? The answer is partially yes, but partially no. They blamed Bernie Sanders. People with Joe Biden campaign, they blamed Bernie Sanders for protesters showing up at Joe Biden's office. Was it Bernie Sanders' fault? Did Bernie send his supporters to Joe Biden's office? No. Who's really behind Iowa protests in Joe Biden's office? Is it people who are concerned with Joe Biden's complicity in Big Pharma? Partially, yes. Completely? No. Who's also in charge of Joe Biden having protesters at his office? Me. That's right. Me. As you know, I was employee of Joe Biden campaign. I had to quit because Joe Biden was such terrible improv student. I could not teach him, which would stop my school from spreading. So I abandoned Joe Biden campaign. Now, what I was supposed to get was settlement pay. But I did not get it. As you know, Joe Biden campaign, not very friendly to unions. But nonetheless, I was supposed to get settlement when I left campaign. Joe Biden did not pay settlement. So I called him and I said, Joe, you need to give me settlement. And he said, why? And I said, listen, Joe, it wasn't funny the first time. It's not funny now. You need to give me settlement immediately. He still refused. So I did what I had to do. I sent some protesters to Joe Biden's office to protest whatever they wanted. Fortunately, there are many reasons to protest Joe Biden. So my protesters were met by other protesters who were protesting him for other causes. Joe Biden, I want you to know that chaos has been sown. Chaos will continue to be sown. I want my settlement, Joe. I want it now. All right. So now you know the truth. You know the truth behind the protesters. It was not Bernie's people. It was not Bernie's people. Those people, you're like, why are some of them there? Those are mine people. My people. You know the drill. Meow says black cat, and I say chaos.